Hi, everyone, and welcome to the YES Alumni Webinar, GYSD, Helping Others on a Budget. We're very happy to have all of you with us today, and if you're joining us later listening to the recording, we're also glad that you're taking the time to listen. We're especially glad to welcome back our speaker, Katherine Gerber. Katherine works for Youth Service America, which is the organization that runs Global Youth Service Day. And last year, she ran a webinar for us on how to plan a GYSD project. It was really wonderful, and today she's back, and she's going to focus on how to plan a project that doesn't require much funding, as well as how to find new funding, which I think will be very helpful for all of us. For those of us new to Adobe Connect, there is a chat box where you can ask any questions that you think of throughout this webinar. And if you haven't already, please fill out the poll as to where you're from so that we can keep a good tally of everyone. We will be recording this webinar so that you can reference it later. And so without further ado, I'll let Katherine begin.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bethany. And can you hear me okay? Great. So as the webinar slides are uploading, there we are. I just wanted to thank Iron for hosting this webinar for all of the alumni programs. We are so happy to work with all of you on Global Youth Service Day. And we know that, planning a project is just the beginning, and raising funds and planning projects that don't require many funds is also very important. So a little bit about YSA, Youth Service America. YSA helps young people find their voice, take action, and make an impact on vital community issues. And we do this through several different ways, 4 key strategies. We activate young people through organizations, schools, and via youth directly, and mainly through our Global Youth Service Day campaign, but also through service learning programs. We provide funding to support those projects that young people are creating. Um, right now, we don't have any international grants open, but we hope to soon. The third piece is we train people on how to create service projects that are really meaningful to the community. And the fourth is we recognize young people for doing the amazing work they do. This is actually my favorite piece of what YSA does because I get to read about and see all the amazing stories that are happening around the world. I should mention that YSA has many, many resources on ysa.org and gysd.org that you can check out. Toolkits in many different languages and a variety of partner resources as well. So Global Youth Service Day. You all hopefully know about it by now. Iron has done a wonderful job of promoting this day of service. And it's an annual day of service if you don't know that already. This year it's happening between April 17th through the 19th of 2015. And last year it was in 113 countries on 6 continents and in all 50 US states. This year we hope to get to 135 countries, so getting all of your partners in every other country involved is really helpful to us and important to the youth service movement. And an estimated 2 million youth will participate in Global Youth Service Day this year, but we only really track about 750,000 of those youth. So Global Youth Service Day is organized by the Global Youth Service Network, and that includes Iron, of course, as an international partner, as a global partner specifically, over 200 community partners, and actually we just reached about 340 of them last week. And these community partners are local, regional, or statewide NGOs, schools and universities, their youth programs, their government agencies, and they serve as official organizers of Global Youth Service Day around the world. They mobilize young people to lead community service projects, and they celebrate events on GYSD, promote the day, and engage many people in it. You can apply to be a community partner online at gysd.org/partners. And that's just the beginning. So we have our community partners, but we also have these other U.S. partners all over the states, 77 lead organizers, and hundreds of grantees and local organizers. We also have our partner days of service, which you really all should check out. Um, this is They are specific days of service like Earth Day um, and a variety of other days like Food Day, which happens at a different time of year. But we ask people to focus on a specific issue area that you really care about and that your community really cares about, and get additional resources from these partners who work on other days of service. So Global Youth Service Day, how do you participate in this? This is a revamped slide of our website, and the Global Youth Service Day campaign is broken down this year into 3 specific steps. The first is raise your voice. We want to hear what you care about and what you're going to do about it. So on the website, you'll see a variety of causes and different project ideas from all over the world that we've put together for you. The second piece is mapping it out. And here you'll see the Global Youth Service Day map. It's a little bit simpler than in years past, and you can add your project to the map. This isn't necessarily a recruitment tool, but it's more of a visibility tool for people to show off what they're doing to other people all around the world. And you'll see on this next slide that this is the form that you'll fill out how to put your map on the project. And it takes about 24 hours for that to show up, but it's pretty easy to do. You can always contact us if you have any questions. And the third piece is telling your story. So YSA and Iron want to hear about what you are doing to make sure that your story is shared around the world. There are so many people that don't believe in the value of youth service, and we need to change that. The youth service movement really needs to hear from you and make sure that they know what's happening and the actions that are going on around the world. So the tell your story piece of the campaign is really to put your story out on social media, but also to gain blog posts, videos, pictures, all of that great stuff. We'll share some links at the end where you can tell your story, and I know that Iron wants to collect a lot of these as well. And so when you're planning a project for Global Youth Service Day, we break this down into 5 different steps. We've seen that when a project is broken down in these steps, it's really more successful. So the first piece is investigating the issue and your community needs, figuring out what is really important to you and your community. The second is preparing and planning. So really figuring out how many volunteers you're going to need, how much funding or not funding at all are you going to need to do your project? What sort of other resources are you going to need? The third piece is acting. So on Global Youth Service Day, you complete that project. But really, number 4 is incredibly important. Just as important is acting, reflecting on what you've done and making sure that you think about all of the things that you were successful at, but also how you change it next year and how you change it for the months to come, since hopefully your project is ongoing. And 5, again, it's really going along with YSA's theme of recognition, is demonstrating and celebrating what you've done. Demonstrating to your community and your community leaders what you've done so that they know the impact that you're making, but also celebrating. Sometimes we forget to really look back and congratulate ourselves on the things that we've done already. So why would you participate in Global Youth Service Day? There are many, many reasons, besides just making an impact on your community and developing leadership skills for yourself and the people you're working with. We also see it as a highly visible campaign that can help you and your organization raise money. It can provide a lot of extra visibility in terms of public recognition from public officials, and a lot of other awards that maybe you or the youth you work with haven't had access to before. And so people use Global Youth Service Day in a variety of ways. It's really meant to be integrated into your current programs and not be a burden of something that you need to create that's extra. So Global Youth Service Day projects are happening all over the world. Last year we had 5,404 in those 113 countries, and they addressed a variety of issues. Here you'll see an environmental project in the top left, a health project in the top right, education project in the bottom left, and a different abilities or a disabilities project on the bottom right-hand corner. These are the symbols that we use on the website to really denote what these projects are about. But I really want to take the time to walk through what some of the projects that you can do that aren't going to take too much money and have been done by other Flex alumni and YES alumni in the past. So the first is an environmental project. This was done by YES alumni in Bangladesh, and it was called Empowering Youth Through Collaborative Learning with Our Rivers, Our World. And it was for Global Youth Service Day 2014, and it was supported by Iron USA and Iron Bangladesh. And the main theme of the project was to spread awareness about river and water pollution, to tell people about the importance of water purification in Bangladesh. And so under this main theme, about 6 mini projects were organized. The names of the specific projects were Let's Think for the Environment, Waterway Washing, Leaders for Safe Waters, Crowdfunding for Safe Waters, and we'll talk a little bit more about crowdfunding in a minute, Click for Save Rivers, and Farewell to Filth. Um, Oh, sorry, one more, Hello to Health. And so all of these projects were really awareness projects, engaging people in thinking about their water systems. And there's a variety of ways that you can make this very cheap. So um, the kind of the broader social campaign that you can do can be done on social media, and social media doesn't cost anything unless you're really paying for a promotional service through that platform. And so we really encourage people to use the social media tools that they have available to them and that are popular in their country to create that campaign. And it's really easy for people to take action in that way. So the next one that I want to talk about is a health project. Um, this one was done by the Rwandan Youth Development and Voluntary Organization, and it was a hand washing project. So this actually is not the picture that came from this project, but it was very similar. But it was a hand washing project in Rwanda to motivate and mobilize 2,500 children to wash their hands with soap. So the campaign was dedicated to raising awareness of hand washing with soap as a key approach to disease prevention. The main objectives were to reduce poor hygiene, related diseases such as diarrhea, cholera, and acute respiratory infections, and to promote school sanitation and hygiene education. So the main pieces of this project, which were really quite cheap, were that they were using things that people already had access to. So everybody, a lot of people already had a bar of soap, but maybe they just didn't use it. And so also bars of soap are pretty easy to make. So you could also do that with a variety of tools and materials. Um, so use materials that you already have, and make sure that the campaign that you're running is pretty accessible. It's one way that people have really made sure that their campaign can be really big and can go really far. The third project I want to talk about is an education project. So here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Youth Exchange and Study Program, of course, YES, Alumni Association, um, did a project for students in the Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired in Sarajevo. And so they held English classes under the YES program, and they paired up with a student from the center. And through conversations, they hope to expand their pupils' vocabulary and open them up to a little bit of a broader um, understanding of where the global economy is really going. And so they continued, excuse me, one person, Nicola, continued teaching English to children in a local kindergarten after this. So his class would be up to 30 kids, and it wasn't very different for GYSD. The same tactics that he used, like listening to songs in English, teaching simple phrases, he hopes to he introduced to other kids during GYSD. And so this project is really dedicating your time. So some of the most cheap projects that you can do is really just spending time with people and dedicating the time that you have to give and the expertise that you have to give to others. And so he really didn't need anything else besides the buy-in from administrators and program developers to do this program. And so it was very successful. Another education project that I do want to mention happened with Flux alumni in Kyrgyzstan. And so this one was really interesting to me because I guess according to national statistics, Kyrgyzstan takes third place among CIS countries after Russia and Kazakhstan in terms of road accidents, which is, we are running a road safety program in India right now, YSA is. So this was really interesting to me. And these indicators have a negative trend. So more people are dying, more people are getting injured because there is less information about road safety. And so the Flex alumni created a program or project called 5 Minutes May Save Your Life. And it was aimed to sharply highlight the problem of road accidents through local visual education and interactive workshops with schools and college students in every region of the country. So it did require a little bit more time to kind of travel there and to safely and to make sure that people can have that access around the country. But with the support of Flex alumni, they were able to do that. And so I believe they actually created some DVD videos and other visual materials that they could use at all of these classes. So also use your skills. Use the skills that you have developed through other programs, through the YES Alumni program, to really make sure that others have access to that as well. It's one of the best gifts that you can give. This is a disabilities project that happened in the States, this picture, because I don't have a picture of the one that I'm going to be talking about. But the project that I want to talk about is also in Kyrgyzstan, done by Flex alumni. And they organized a full-time master class for children with disabilities. They made some postcards, but the main goal was to spend some time and pay attention to the children and really engage with them. So the children really enjoyed creating postcards, which frankly are quite cheap. You can, even pick up some free postcards at travel centers and things like that. And just knowing where you can get free things is also helpful. And they eventually sent them to their parents, which was really fun. There's another disabilities project that I quickly want to talk about, which is a Flex alumni project in Moldova. And five of the Flex alumni, actually organized a set of activities for about 11 children. And so they got to know each other. And so it wasn't just one way. it wasn't just the Flex alumni getting to know the children, but the children also getting to know them. And the children, through these leadership activities, really learned more about themselves. They learned about things that they could do that maybe they haven't thought about before. And then they did some other fun activities, like organizing a lottery, and you know, in seeing which child got a specific prize at the end. And so it was really fun, and they actually became close friends and continued this mentoring program for a long time. So I really encourage you to, again, take the things that you're good at and really use those to your best, to uh, the, the biggest advantage that you can. So in order to continue your projects after GYSD, which is ultimately what we hope you will do, GYSD is not just a day of service, but we hope that you really spread this out throughout the year, and that GYSD is the day that you use to celebrate these things and maybe start a new project. But the way that you can continue these after GYSD is to, first and foremost, before your GYSD project, define your goals. So really lay out what you want to achieve during Global Youth Service Day and following after, and explaining this to other people that are participating in Global Youth Service Day will really help them engage throughout the process. They'll give them a little bit more context for why they're participating, and let them be excited for months to come, not just that day, or those 3 days rather. So defining the goals is the first piece. The second is laying out the process. So over Global Youth Service Day weekend, we're going to do this. But, after that, the next week, we're going to meet again, and we're going to, talk about what was really successful with Global Youth Service Day. We're going to celebrate that. And then we're going to do this other piece of the project. And so really laying it out for the people to see how they can participate from then on is really going to increase engagement. The third piece, which I personally think is the most important, is to thank people. When you thank people for coming and thank them for the effort that they've made, it really extends the impact of what they experienced during your project. And so they are more likely, statistically we found, they are more likely to come back and participate with your project alone. Excuse me, participate with your project. The fourth piece, which I think I just started to say, was do nothing alone. YSA often says we do nothing alone, and this is highly visible with this webinar and working with Iron. We work with so many partners, and we aren't able to have the impact on Global Youth Service Day that we do have without our partners. And so work with other people, get their input, ask them to take leads on projects, or even specific aspects of projects. And by doing this, you are really asking for their long-term commitment. And if they have ownership over those pieces, then they are much more likely to come back and continue afterwards. So that's kind of a general look at continuing our projects after Global Youth Service Day. The next piece that I want to talk about is how to fund your projects after Global Youth Service Day. So we talked a little bit about how to create projects that are, fairly cheap, and using things that you already have, using your skills, using social media, spending time with people, things like that can make your project really cheap. But there's other ways to fund your project that are available to you that maybe you haven't thought about before. Or maybe you have. But the first I want to talk about today is building partnerships. And partnerships are, it's what I do. I love working with other organizations and making sure that the impact that we create separately is stronger together. And so do your research is the first part of building a partnership. Making sure that you know something about that partner. What do they do best? What do they need? And are you approaching them for the right reason? Are you not just mass emailing people, but really customizing it to what their needs are? And businesses are run by people. So when you remember that and think that, someone may look at this, maybe not exactly as you would look at your own email, but they would look at it in still a human perspective. And so when you're talking to someone, they want to know what's kind of in it for them. And you can approach them in a much more human and relaxed way um, if you do realize that businesses are run by people, and they aren't just money generators. Um, the other thing I want to say is that it's not just about you. Um, Sadly, we all, GYSD is about youth and it's about celebrating youth, but sometimes businesses don't necessarily see it that way. And you can use that to your benefit. So even if it's not about you or your cause, you can make it about the business. So what is it um, how can you phrase your project in a way that makes sense for the business? Um, Spelling out the benefits, and letting them know uh, what they can get out of it. So is it more public recognition in the community? Is it maybe they have a tool or a program or a material that people don't necessarily know that they have. So what can you share with the community about that business, and let them know that it is a resource to other people to help them generate um, that revenue, because ultimately that is what they generally are after. Although you will find business owners who are really interested in a specific cause, but generally they want to know why their business should participate instead of just their individual. And so don't get lost in kind of telling them um, or explaining your cause. Really focus it on them. And the fourth thing is that people do want to say yes. So having that assumption when you walk into a business and try to create this partnership with them is really important. Uh, First, I think it just creates some confidence with you, and that you do believe in what you're doing, and you're flexible to make this work. And so making sure that you recognize that giving the chance for people to say yes is a great opportunity. If you walk into that business and you have this mindset that people are already going to say no, you're not going to be successful. I can probably ensure that. And so having an optimistic attitude is really going to help you along the way. So the last bullet point, which I just added to the slide, is types of support. So you can ask businesses for a variety of things. The things I see for Global Youth Service Day projects and long-term volunteer projects that are most common are in-kind donations and financial support. So in-kind donations means things like they will donate lumber, or they will donate paper, or they will donate printing services, things like that. I've even seen bus companies donate their time. So not only are they donating the bus for people to use for a specific time when maybe it's not booked by someone who would pay for it, um, they also are donating the time of the employee. And so maybe the employees also want to donate their time to your cause. So these in-kind donations are really the way to go, I think, in terms of making your project a little bit cheaper for you. And the second piece is financial support, which I think is the most common of what people ask businesses for, but sometimes is a little bit less successful than the in-kind donations piece. And so that can be in the form of a donation directly to the organization. It can be a donation to the awareness campaign leader. For example, if it's a global organization that you're trying to raise money for, they can donate money that way. And so there's a variety of ways that you can gain financial support from businesses as well. The second way to continue funding your projects after Global Youth Service Day is through crowdfunding. And so this is a way to use people's passion for your cause to your advantage. And so this crowdfunding is an incredibly powerful tool. it essentially uses what we call the mass crowd, um, many different people, I guess, and asks a variety of people to donate a small amount of money. So essentially, it takes people's passions and asks for their support in any amount. And the power is that a lot of people can donate a small amount of money, and you can end up with a really large amount of funding. We've seen lots of really great, successful stories with crowdfunding. Um, and so, thinking about these different crowdfunding sites is going um, to be advantageous for your organization and for you. I'll talk a little bit more about the types of crowdfunding sites in a second, but first I want to mention about why or how these can be most successful. So really it's engaging your audiences. So it's similar to what we just talked about with creating a partnership with a business, but what do people want to hear about? Sometimes I see people's crowdfunding sites really focusing on the main broad goals of the organization and what they're doing, and they aren't really specific to the project or to a story that's really talking about the success that this funding could have. And so my advice for crowdfunding appeals is really keep it specific. So what exactly is someone funding? What project, what impact will they have if they do give money? And how will they see the impact of that? So is it in the number of people educated? Is it in the number of trees planted? Things like that, really spelling it out for them. And the other thing that we see, and you'll notice this is how Iron and YSA kind of run our storytelling campaigns, is that we focus on specific people. It really pulls on people's emotions to hear about one person affected by this funding and how their lives could be changed. And so really pulling on that humanistic portion of your project could really be advantageous for you. And that really pulls into the third bullet, which is telling your story. So really laying out how the funding will affect a human being is going to be helpful for you. The other thing is to use a specific amount and a deadline. Use SMART goals. So be specific, be meaningful, explain why you need it, essentially. Be action-oriented, which is the A, which is essentially asking for something to be done. Have it be real, don't have it be figurative, and time bound, which is the T. So say when you need it. And I always remember when I'm making goals that they need to be SMART. So that might be helpful to you as well. So the platforms that I said I would talk about, these are two that I really like for international crowdfunding sites. There aren't a whole lot of international options for crowdfunding out there, at least not compared to what's available to US residents, but these are two really good ones that I trust. One is Indiegogo, which you all may have heard about before, but I really like this site and I believe that they have a great mobile application as well. And Global Giving. Global Giving is an organization that YSA works with directly. And we've created a campaign for Global Youth Service Day. And essentially, we ask people to raise about $1,000 for their Global Youth Service Day projects, except the deadline is, I believe, in May, which is a little bit longer than Global Youth Service Day. And we ask people to raise $1,000, and as a result, you are put into the Global Giving Network. And so this means that you can gain funding through different corporations. You can, different opportunities that Global Giving has. They provide trainings on how to gain funds, things like that. And they're a really well-respected organization in and online fundraising platforms. So those are two that I really recommend. And we'll produce this website later for you as well, theglobalgiving.org/YSA, which is a direct link to that campaign. So the third way of continuing to fund your projects after GYSD is organizational grants. And the reason that this is number 3 is I think it's the least effective and the one that's, or sorry, not least effective. I would say that the amount of time that you spend putting into getting organizational grants, it probably is the least successful. And so crowdfunding and working with the people in your community directly is really the way to go for Global Youth Service Day and service projects. Organizational grants are great, but they take a lot more effort. And sometimes it's, Global Youth Service Day is just a month away, and so it's not as fast as some of the other things could be. And I'm also going to point out a couple of the same pieces that I have for crowdfunding and in-kind donations and business partnerships that I think you guys should focus on, which is doing your research. So we see a lot of applications come into YSA that aren't related to a specific service project. It's related to a specific organization, and we're interested in focusing on projects, not just organizations. And so making sure that you do your research about your funder and knowing what they fund is going to be really advantageous to you. The second piece is telling your story. I have to read a lot of applications in my work, and so going through and really seeing something that really is impactful is really nice. To be quite frank, I'm a human too. It's just like businesses are run by people, and nonprofits and funders are run by people too. We want to see something that's really impactful on a human, on a community, and so telling that story in a humanistic way is really helpful. And making a specific ask. Sometimes I see projects come through that say, we want our project funded, but there's no amount, there's no timeline for when this project will be done, things like that. So still using those SMART goals is important. And we love GrantStation.com. They're a partner of YSA's, and they have a new international funding site. And so this kind of aggregates all of the funding opportunities that you can find on USAID websites, on a variety of other US international funding sites, and some international opportunities that aren't funded by US organizations as well. But they're a great resource, and you can sign up for their free online newsletter on their website. And we promote their stuff all the time as well. So the 3 things I want to make sure that you walk away from at the end of today are these specific calls to action, I would like to say. One is to do a Global Youth Service Day project, and I can see in the chat box that everybody is talking about all of their great projects, and I haven't had a time to really read them while I'm talking, but I would love to as we do a question and answer piece. And so doing your Global Youth Service Day project is the first step, and you can find resources on gysd.org. And you can also, step 2, put your Global Youth Service Day project on the map. So mapping it out and making sure that it's there, it's visible, people can see what you're doing, and you gain some visibility from that is also really important. The third thing that we want to see, both IRON and YSA, is submitting your stories to the YES program. And actually, I think my link is hidden under my pictures. I really apologize for that. But I think that if Bethany can just type that into the discussion notes that are going on, then you guys can click on that. I believe that it's YES Alumni Stories page. Yep, and she just put it in the chat box. So please check that out as well. So now I think I would love to go to some questions and see if you guys have any questions for me, and reflecting on what we've talked about today, but even past that about Global Youth Service Day and other projects and other questions that you have. And so the first question that I see is from Hassan Saeed, and he says, what is the theme for GYSD this year? So Hassan, this is a great question, and people ask us this every single year. We don't necessarily have a theme because we want it to be really based on what youth in the specific community that you work in feel passionate about. And we qualify this as kind of taking advantage of kids' sparks. So what fires them up, and what are they good at? And kind of putting those two things together to create a Global Youth Service Day project. The way that we're running the campaign is really through the Raise Your Voice, Map It Out, Tell Your Story theme, I would say, but not necessarily a specific issue area. Does anybody else have any other questions? Great, and I see a couple others coming in as well. Great, Amadou from Sierra Leone. It's great to hear from you. Thank you for your comment, Simona. I'm glad that it was useful. And Bethany, I'm not sure if people had asked questions earlier on and I just hadn't answered them. I know that you've been keeping tabs on that a little bit more.
I have been. Actually, I haven't gotten any other questions yet. So everyone, Katherine is an expert on GYSD. If you have any questions about planning a project or any of the new funding resources that she mentioned, now is a really great time to ask. We'll leave the chat box open for a while longer if you have any questions you'd like to ask her. And in the meantime, please fill out the poll. How do you feel about running a GYSD project now that you've attended this webinar?
Great. So Hassan has another question. While reaching out to corporate organizations for funding, what do they look for? Hassan knows that I mentioned they wish to say yes, but what pushes them to fund various initiatives? And Hassan, I'm not a development person, but I will say that I've worked with lots of people who have worked with corporations, and I would say it's the same sort of um, key points. So on their websites, they usually spell out what their initiatives are. A lot of organizations in the U.S. fund education projects, but I also know that environmental projects are very popular as well. And so it really depends on what they're funding. And then beyond that, what do they look for in the application? I think that they also look for some credibility. So I think that Global Youth Service Day really increases your credibility. It shows that you've done global projects. It shows that you can work with a variety of organizations. I absolutely think that working with IRON creates a ton of credibility. So mentioning them in your appeal as well is good. And then really making sure that they know that you understand um, the parameters of their program and your own program. And so knowing um, what what you are really good at, but then also knowing what your challenges are and being realistic about what those are. I think sometimes the frustration that I have with funding is that sometimes people kind of promise things that they aren't able to do. And so knowing what those weaknesses are, but also the strengths are really going to help you with that conversation. And I will say, yeah, you're welcome. And I will say, in addition to that, I think that, creating a personal relationship with some of the funders is also helpful. I know that's not always possible, but I'm trying to create a relationship with them and really understanding what their corporation feels strongly about is also really important. And knowing that you are in this partnership in order to help them as well is going to be advantageous to you. And I can see that a couple other people are typing.
Maybe while we wait for them to type, Catherine, I'm really interested in what you were discussing about the crowdfunding. I've never actually done it myself either, and I don't know if you could give them a bit of a time frame about how long it takes to set up a crowdfunding venture.
Yeah, so
Or what the steps exactly are. Yeah.
right. So I think that um, it kind of depends on what your project is and where you are in your project planning. So if you already have the goals of your project laid out, kind of what the benefits are to people, things like that, and maybe a story to go along with it, then it could take, an hour to really set up a crowdfunding site. Um, with some of the international platforms, you do have to get approved. And so sometimes that could take up to a week for them to kind of look at the project, for them to assess it, and then to move forward. Um, but um, if you don't have your story and things like that, I would first work on creating the answers to the questions that the crowdfunding site will ask you. And so looking at that crowdfunding site, really getting a good idea of what they're asking, and then um, really making sure that you answer those specific questions in your application and your for the platform um, is is going to save you a whole lot of time when you actually start doing it. So making sure that you kind of have those things in your back pocket already is going to make the process really easy. But they're really so simple, Bethany. It's amazing that more people don't use it actually.
That's awesome. I've always been so intimidated by it, so it's nice to know that it's not as hard as it seems it is.
I
Uh,
will say the thing that's hard about it is actually getting people to donate. And so that is another aspect that we didn't really talk about today. We talked about kind of the core pieces, but you really do need to run social media campaigns around it. You really need to let people know that it's up there. You can't just rely on people finding it. So it's got to be a draw, and, and people have to know about it to get
I'm
going.
glad you mentioned that. I think that is a really important step. So that was a great addition to your answer. While you were answering my question, Jolita typed in and said, "When choosing a corporation, must their vision go together with your project goal?"
Um, I think the way that I would phrase this, Jolita, is really that um, you should really try to make sure that there's some connection. So that their vision is connected in some way to your project goal. I wouldn't say that it has to match exactly. So for example, they could be really interested in education and literacy. And so you may be really interested in working with specific different abilities populations. Um, and and so those two things don't really quite match up. But if you're working on an education project with that uh, with that specific population, then I think that those things really could go together. So I think the answer is probably yes, to be more direct about it. But I think that there's some flexibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. You might be more likely to get funding from a corporation that does go along with your project, at least in some way, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. There, Hassan had another question that says, if any other global celebration days fall during the days of GYSD, can they be celebrated and categorized as a GYSD project?
Hassan, I love this question. This is one of my favorite questions to answer. The answer is absolutely yes. In fact, that was what I was talking about early on with those partner days of service, is that, we would love for you to combine a variety of different service days with Global Youth Service Day. And in fact, I should mention this as well. The Global Youth Service Day is really meant to be on the weekend of the 17th through the 19th this year. But if you have to extend it past those dates or before, that's absolutely fine. In fact, we count everything that happens within the month of April that people want to register as Global Youth Service Day projects as a service day project, a GYSD project. And so, yes, you can absolutely celebrate another global celebration that's service oriented as part of Global Youth Service Day. Great. That's wonderful to hear, Hassan. You have many projects planned in April. That's great to hear.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. I see that Amadou has been typing for a long time, so I want to make sure that he has enough time to finish his thought.
Great. And while people are typing and entering, I do want to thank you one more time for doing Global Youth Service Day and making youth volunteerism a priority. I know that IRN and the YES program and Flex and all the other great State Department programs really work to um, to to make youth volunteerism a given within communities, and we really, really are thankful for that. Um, we don't think that we can wait any longer for kids to really grow up and do something. And so, um, I mean, you are activists now, at whatever age. We work with kids between 5 to 25, but we want people of all ages to take action. And Francois says Cameroonian alumni are still in school, so they will follow up with the recording. Oh, that's great. Yep. We have a lot of people watch our recordings too.
Yeah, so thank you, Francois, for bringing that up, because I did want to tell everyone that is in the room. If you want to watch this again later for a reference, or if you want to tell any other alumni that you know about it, we will be posting the recording on our website, yesprograms.org/alumni resources, and also on the Yes YouTube channel and the Vimeo channel. So it will be available for you to reference again later. All right, Catherine, there's one more question for you. As YES alumni, we are planning on implementing a health-related project this year, but we haven't found any partners yet. Do you think they're too late? Amadou is from Sierra Leone, and they want to implement an Ebola project since that's what their community needs right now.
Yeah. And Amadou, my recommendation would be to start small. So I think with a lot of Global Youth Service Day projects, oh, you can all hear me still, right? Yes. Okay, great. Uh, so with a lot of Global Youth Service Day projects, people think of really tackling really large global issues, which is amazing, and I love that. But I think one thing that will also ensure success is kind of starting smaller and making sure that your project goals are really realistic. So we have a month left, and that is plenty of time to get partners on board, to get people excited about it. But if you can focus your project on one specific action and one specific really well action, then I think that you will be much more successful. So if you're doing something at a hospital, then working with them directly and just asking them something small, I think could ensure success and could actually make sure that when you want to do another project with them in the next month or the next year or something like that, that they're much more likely to come back and work with you. So yes, it's still possible. Just make sure that it's realistic for the month to come.
Thank you, Catherine. I think that that was really great advice. As she mentioned, we have 1 month until GYSD. It is officially 1 month from today. So in the coming days, we're going to be starting our social media campaign for GYSD. Make sure you're checking our Twitter and Facebook for great posts about GYSD and some advice to come. And we are really looking forward to having a great GYSD in 1 month and hearing all of the projects that you plan. So please make sure that you send us your stories. I'd really like to thank Catherine so much for her time today, for giving that presentation and taking the time to answer all of your questions. And I'd also really like to thank all of you for attending. We're very glad that you came.